Em HaBanim Chap, and I'm going to give you the short introduction to this. We're actually starting the second part of it, okay?
No, the English is good.
The English will be good,
For
okay?
now.
Right. So this is a book by a person by the name of Rabbi Moshe who lived in Hungary in World War II, was the head of a community called Pishtian. Pishtian was a resort town, had springs, which people came from, medical springs. That's only important because it means that a lot of people came through that town. So he had a lot of interaction with a number of other Jewish leaders in the city, and when the Nazis came to power, he suddenly realized that what's God trying to say here? What does this all mean? This is 1942-43. He had actually believed before the war that one should not go to Israel. One's got to wait for Mashiach to kind of drop in the temple from the sky, and we'll all suddenly be there. And suddenly, as his whole world began to fall apart, all his yeshiva was sent away, his community was trained away, was sent away on trains, on transports. He was forced to flee from Pishtian, which was in Slovakia. He actually ends up in Budapest in hiding. Yeah. So he suddenly realized something else is going on here. So he writes this very long book, which actually he printed in 1943. The first printing was there during the war. Was actually reprinted after the war a number of times, in which he basically comes to the conclusion that the whole purpose of the Holocaust was to give us a kick in the pants that we ought to be going to Israel. In other words, that the people who went to Israel before us, even though they are not religious, even though they may be leftist and secular and agnostic, are nonetheless they're leading us to Mashiach. They're leading us to Israel. We ought to be following them. And if we want to bring Mashiach, we actually have to go to Israel first. So this is a book that he wrote. And as a result, it's called Em HaBanim Chap. The mother is rejoicing for her children, as if to say God is waiting for us to come. But it's and he writes some of his personal experiences in it. But more importantly, he talks about the importance of really the way to get to Geulah, to redemption, the role that every person plays, whether they are committed or not committed, whether they are traditional or not traditional, and how God is going to actually bring us along. So we've been doing it since September, and it's an interesting book. It's a very detailed kind of book. It goes from topic to topic, brings a number of sources, but we find this actually fascinating in terms of discussing the role of every Jew. And what's most important is where he is coming from, and he was a very traditional kind of fellow. In fact, let me show you this picture here somewhere. This picture's here actually. This is the fellow. This is Rav Teichdel. Hungarian.
How old is he there?
How old is he there? He's not that young. Beard is white. Okay, I don't know how old he is.
He doesn't look very old.
I can look it up. I don't remember offhand. We can we'll go back to
You know what my issue is, Moshe?
Yeah.
My issue is we speak in Hashem will redeem us even if we are unworthy.
Yeah.
And what about all the people who were never redeemed?
So there's
the people who are living today.
Right.
This always speaks of the people who are living today.
Correct.
Or who had full lives. What about the people who were wiped out? Whenever.
Correct. Well,
they weren't redeemed.
That's true. Correct. So once again, everything in the world runs according to the laws of nature. So not everybody, you can't turn off the laws of nature to make things work the way we want to make them work. So we talk about redemption, we're talking about redeeming the people. We're not talking about necessarily redeeming every single individual. You always have to differentiate between the role of the people and the role of the individual. People come and go, right?
So in other words, there was a Holocaust, and it wasn't one individual. Even the tzaddiks were lumped in that.
That's correct. Right, because once you have that nation, that's what happened. That's right. Yes.
So there was an edict, and it wasn't one. It was everyone who was part of that edict in that area.
Right. Yes.
And that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
In other words, otherwise you're going to break with the way the world works. But what he's really trying to say is because the tzaddikim did not go to Israel, right? They're also to some extent responsible, maybe for their own demise because they had an opportunity. And so he actually writes very strongly about individuals, about especially the Hungarian rabbinate, who kind of felt that because they were religious, they were not going to be touched by Hitler. There was this false sense of security in Hungary until very late in the war when things turned around against them.
Okay.
But initially in the war, the Hungarians felt that Hitler was going to be busy with Poland, was going to be busy with Czechoslovakia, and Hungary had their own kind of government, which was allied with Hitler, but it was left until really about 1944, which is, by the way, why a lot of Hungarian Jews survived the war.
So you know what that means? That means that if there's a decree, we're done.
We're done.
We're part of a decree that is taking the whole group. That's a very scary thing.
Well, it means that
you can be the best person in the world to be part of it.
That's correct. And if you're in the wrong place in the wrong time, you are going to be caught.
Of course.
If I'm a great tzaddik and I happen to go in the middle of a hurricane or the middle of a tornado, it doesn't mean I'm not going to die.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But just means that, you know what, but I still have a role, I should pray for good weather.
It's just hard to reconcile that.
Yeah.
That's all.
I hear what you're saying.
And not only that, but it also means that, according to his teachings, that Mashiach will never come.
No, it does not mean that. It means that it means if enough people work and try. What he believes is that everybody would to move to Israel, Mashiach would come. He believes that's the first step. How does Mashiach come? When does Mashiach come? That's a much more complicated issue.
When you say everybody, and we're talking...
But that's what he's talking about. He's talking about the fact that the people who... here's the key to what he's writing. He's writing those people who moved to Israel. Let's kind of spin it a different way. The people who moved to Israel, the early Zionist settlers, even though they were not traditional Jews, even though they're looked as people who are antagonistic to Judaism, they're the ones who don't do Shabbat, who don't do kosher, right? The early kibbutzim were leftists, were communists, were socialists, were not religious in many cases, were anti-religious. They're playing a role to bring the Jewish people to Israel.
It's a paradox, isn't it? That
Yes,
Herzl wasn't a Torah-loving Jew, yet they're the ones who started the whole process.
Right.
Yeah, it's very fascinating.
Correct, right. Okay, let's take a little bit of this. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to read the Hebrew and I got the English here as well, so we'll do both of it together. So, Melachim, it says in the book of Melachim, Kiwa Hashem Adamni b'nei Yisrael moreh ma'od v'efes hatzur v'efes hazur v'ein ozer l'Yisrael. This is taken from the book of Melachim, the second book of Melachim, chapter 14. It says that God saw that the Jewish people were afflicted, was very difficult, and there was no one to help Israel. V'lo diber Hashem lemchot et shem Yisrael mitachat hashamayim. And during this era of the Jewish people, God did not want to destroy the Jewish people, never wants to destroy the Jewish people from under the heavens. Vayoshiim, and He saved them biyad Yeravam ben Yoash, and He saved them from the hands of Yeravam ben Yoash, not to be confused with Yeravam ben Nevat, but Yeravam ben Yoash was not necessarily a great, committed person. He worshipped idols like all the others. So Yeravam ben Yoash was placed in control of Israel. He was a member of he was a Jewish king. He was a king, and nonetheless, he was the one who saves Israel. What do we know about this? So we know two things from this pasuk. One is God saw the Jews were afflicted. There was no one to save them. God does not want to destroy the Jewish people, and God puts in place King Yeravam ben Yoash, who is going to actually expand the borders of the Jewish state at that point. This is in the second book of Kings, the biblical time. Uvemedrash Tanchuma Amru. And it says in the Medrash Tanchum al pasuk zeh v'lo diber Hashem that God did not speak. It says as follows. What do you mean God did not speak? V'chi mativo shel Yeravam hacha. What's Yeravam ben Yoash doing here? Why is he the one to save the Jewish people? Says the Medrash. V'arei oved avodah zarah haya. He was an idol worshiper. Elam ibnei shelo kibel lashon hara al Amos, because he didn't accept all the lashon hara that was being spoken about Amos the prophet, and that's why God put him in place to be the leader. That generation, says the Medrash, was a generation where they worshipped idols. And the head of the community was worshipping idols. That's Yeravam ben Yoash. Nonetheless, God says, the land which I promised to Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov and their descendants, who's going to be the leader, says the Medrash? This person, this Yeravam ben Yoash, who didn't speak Lashon Hara, did not hear Lashon Hara, did not accept it, he's going to be the one to lead the Jewish people. Amru mashal masa biyad Yoshua ben Nun v'yad David melech Yisrael masu biyado. What even was not given to Yoshua ben Nun and King David was given even to Yeravam ben Yoash's hand. Shenema v'Yoshiem biyad Yeravam ben Yoash, because the Bible tells us there that this Yeravam ben Yoash, who was the next king, actually was able to save the Jewish people from all the enemies around them. So what do you see from this? So you got here, we have the Jews are in trouble. The leader is a not religious Jew, whatever that means, but he's an idol worshiper, and we know that God is not going to abandon the Jewish people. Ad kan lashon haMedrash. This is what the Medrash says on this pasuk. Rav Teichel is going to try to learn out from here what applies to our own redemption. When God decides that He wants to save the Jewish people, when it's a very difficult situation, He will save them even by the hands of a wicked person who is an idol worshiper. What makes this person be the leader? He's got something personal that's good, something communal that's good, something of loving Jewish people, something of achdus. Which is he didn't accept lashon hara. And the fact that he didn't give this kind of sense of leadership and success to other people who are more righteous, such as Yoshua ben Nun in his day, or David HaMelech in his day, Masru biyado, he gave over to the hand of Yerav ben Yoash, even though he really wasn't worthy by himself, but Yerav ben Yoash was needed. And even the generation was not that great, nonetheless, God ensured the Jewish people would not be extinguished or exterminated by their enemies, and He put in place an individual whose sole right to leadership in Jewish tradition is because he didn't hear and he didn't accept lashon hara. So
how does that work, though? I don't understand that. He was an idol worshiper, and yet he didn't do lashon hara. Wouldn't worshiping idols
no, there's some
be lashon hara itself?
No.
You know what, Albert? That's like his tshuva. That was his redeeming quality, even though he was an idol worshiper.
It's like saying an ethical agnostic. An ethical agnostic, a kind agnostic, a person who doesn't believe in God, rejects God, but yet helps anyone, helps individuals.
My beef, though, is if you're an idol worshiper, there is one God. I am the Lord your God. Right. You shall have no other idols. You're dead.
Well, you could be dead. You could be dead.
So I understand the tshuva part, but I don't understand.
But he was the best person at this point because of his connection to the Jewish community. That's what he's trying to say. In other words, the other part is to understand that idol worship is something we don't really fully comprehend. It looks to us to be very primitive. It's surely antiquated. And that's really because most of the Western faiths today that we're used to seeing, Christianity and Islam, are not really idol worship.
Yeah.
They've gotten beyond that. In an ancient world where everybody had their own idols, that was accepted. The big sin today in the Jewish community is not idol worship.
No.
It's not idol worship. They're not worshiping idols. Even the most anti-Jewish person, idol worship has fallen to disuse.
What do you think today it is?
Secularism.
Really
secularism.
And what does that mean?
Means no faith.
You think that's our biggest sin today?
Of course.
No faith.
No belief, not no faith. No belief in God. Because if you believed in God as the one God, you'd want to listen to what He has to say. Secularism is the antithesis of not just Judaism; it's the antithesis of Christianity and Islam too.
So it's not money being an idol today; it's secularism. That is the father of everything, which includes money and this and that. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I think the modern world has lost its push for religious commitment.
Yeah.
Right now, it happens to be it affects us as Jews because Jews are less religiously committed in general, and the secularism is going to say, "I'm going to look for secular values, which could be money." You're right. Money brings a small amount of happiness. You can't say money brings no happiness.
Up to a certain level.
But a very small amount. A lot of money brings a little amount of happiness.
Yes.
That's probably the more correct interpretation. But people are willing to try to put X amount of money because they feel they can get much more happiness, and it doesn't lead that way. But the secularism is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Which mitzvah? I think it's more than mitzvah. It's just a sense of not committing to anything. It's more secular. I look at the world as me.
It's part of society.
So what are the schools doing about it? What is anybody doing?
The same thing the churches are doing. Nothing. No. It's a modern phenomenon that people aren't taking to religion like they used to.
Yeah.
Correct. It's the change in society and modernity.
There's also a social thing too.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Anyway.
Okay. What's the reason? Vatam lazen nirali, and this seems to me, says Rabbi Teichel, kakatu b'sfurno b'parshat v'yishlach, as it says in Parshat v'yishlach in the commentary of the Sfurno, where God says pray over Veh. God speaks to this is to Yaakov, I believe. That you will be multiplied. You says to God, to Yaakov, don't worry, you will multiply, you'll be many, and don't worry, don't be concerned about your descendants, even if they're not really great people, good people. Don't worry, they'll ever be destroyed. Because I don't need a suitable object. I don't need something that is proper. I'll do for you, Yaakov, what I promised, even if your descendants are not proper and suitable, even if I don't have the right object, which means the people. I don't need a reason. I don't need a reason to make sure your descendants will exist. Therefore I will do what I said. Even if they're not, there's no reason for the Jewish people being worthy. Even if they're unworthy, I will surely save the Jewish people and not let them be completely exterminated. In other words, and that, by the way, is a promise that we will never be eradicated. You're right. There are a lot of decrees and edicts, but the Jewish people are still here. A lot of innocent people have died and suffered, but we're still here.
I always thought that the thinking was that if you didn't obey the laws, Hashem will not be your God anymore, and God the land of Israel would vomit you out of the land that you.
Right, that's what happened, and that's what happened. Now there's a return. He's saying it even supersedes that. God took us out. The assumption is when we will all come back. I guess Rav Teichel is saying that when we will all come back, we'll all recognize God eventually. So it's a process. One is to get back to the land, and when we'll all get there, then that we'll all recognize the greatness of God. Right.
The world will recognize
but it's rather than simply saying first you recognize God and then you go to Israel. He's turned the process around.
Yes.
Okay.
First move to Israel.
Yeah.
And then start working on your.
Bring in 4 more trudos and we're going to have to.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it.
Yeah. Maybe. V'roiti b'sefer Mishpatei Yaakov Asugyot Hashat. And I found a book called Sefer Mishpatei Yaakov. One of the things is he finds books that he writes about that he sometimes doesn't even have when he refers to them. I'm not sure if he had this book when he refers to it in the next paragraph. L'gon echad milita, to one rabbi from Lita, from Latvia, Bakdama, he writes there, and the footnote tells you who the author was. Shapiresh Mambar Navi explains what the prophet says in Isaiah 54, Ki arim yamushu v'hagvot tismateno, the mountains will jump or move, and the gvaot and the hills will be removed. However, your kindness, my kindness, God says, will never be removed, will not be removed from you. So Yan ki chesed Hashem eino tolui b'shum siba acheret, because God's chesed to us is not dependent on any specific reason. Any other reason, asher b'haver siba yivutalem sovev, that if the reason goes, then the kindness will go. Kmo harim ugvot shetluim b'sorah, it's the same way that mountains and hills hang upon the foundations of the earth. If you move the foundations, Hashem yinatei ars mimkoma yiplu harim ugvot. If you were to move the earth, there'd be an earthquake, the mountain could collapse. In other words, the mountain is based upon the earth. If the earth suddenly were to move, somehow the foundation of the mountain would be upset. The mountain could break down, or some of it could break down. The same thing for the hills. If there's an earthquake, it splits. But as he says, we find that sometimes what actually happens, there's natural phenomena where there's like an earthquake or some other kind of seismic fault, that the mountains begin to get lower or higher. They move up and down. This is because mountains depend on something else. Mountains are founded on the earth that's underneath it, the core of the earth. If the core of the earth moves, or there's a fault line, or there's a seismic shift, then the mountain will actually be affected. Aval Chesed Hashem hu siba shabati tluya b'siba acheret. But the love of God, the chesed, the kindness of God to us, is not based upon anything else. It's only because we are the descendants of Jacob. Al kain le'olam lo tamuch. Therefore, we'll never be abandoned, never be left, never be removed. V'zeh shamar katuv ki arim yamushu. The hills or the mountains will be removed. V'agvaot timoteno, and the hills will move. V'chasdei mi'etcha le'olam lo yamush. My chesed from you will never be removed. This is what is found in in the Sefer. V'hu metim in Divrei Sforno. This is what the Sforno says. V'chein katuv Rabbeinu Maharal Netzach Yisrael. Same thing the Maharal, famous Maharal Miprag, writes in his book Netzach Yisrael. Same concept. Shekol Avtachot V'Yudei Yisrael Shivtiach Otanu HaKadosh Baruch Hu Neviyav. All the promises that God made through His prophets, Inam Tloyim Ve'Inam Kshurim B'Shum T'nai B'Shum Inyan. They're not dependent on anything, not dependent on any condition. V'Yaf Imanu Chas V'Shalom Einam Osim Etzono Yikoyam Bano Yikoyam Otam Bano. Even if we don't keep His word, God will still maintain His connection to us, will maintain His promise to us. And he explained this in detail. V'Kata Rabbeinu Rambam B'Igeret Teiman, and Rambam wrote in the Igeret to the Jews of Yemen. The Jews of Yemen were undergoing a lot of persecution at that point by very zealous Muslims, and they were under a lot of pressure. And the Rambam wrote to them to kind of strengthen their belief. Ukamo Keni writes, Bisarnu behemitz otanu yitbarach, that God has promised to us, or God has strengthened us, that God will never reject us as a collective entity. This comes back to the collective group versus the individual. As a group of people, God will never reject us. Even if we kind of make Him angry, we transgress His commandments. Sheken Katuv, as it says in Jeremiah, even if the heavens were to be measured and the foundations of the earth would be searched and beneath, then nonetheless, then I would reject the entire seed of Israel because they've done. Yes?
Sorry, Moshe, again, and I'm troubled by this. I'm still for the Jews who were born in the right time, because plenty of Jews are not born in the right time to fall under this heading.
Which heading? Yes.
The heading of no matter who you are, you're going to be blessed by God and all this kind of stuff. This is for the Jews who are born in a time of no...
This is about the Jews will never be completely exterminated. This is about God will maintain His connection to the people.
I know, but...
Even though you can't see it, even though... That's what it means. Even though we happen to live in a land of plenty, we happen to live during a wonderful era, right? It's only now.
Thank God, up until now.
Right? And up until now, correct? Things might be changing, we don't know. But it's much easier than Jews who lived 300 years ago or 500 years ago, medieval Europe or Spain or whatever.
But not 80 years ago.
But not 80 years ago, not 80 years ago.
What
In Europe.
Years ago?
In Europe.
Oh,
Not in Canada. In Europe. Canada had its doors closed.
So those people don't fall under this.
But once again, it's about the collective. That's why I try to explain to you. It's about the collective relationship that God has with the collective. As an individual, Jews will live and Jews will die and Jews will suffer and Jews will be better and Jews will get sick and Jews will... You know what? We hear about people getting sick every day. We say, where's God? So this is we don't see the day-to-day, right? But here's what we do know. The Jewish people are here, and the Jewish people go back to antiquity. There ain't no one else like that, and no one else survived all of those edicts and decrees and destructions. And if it wasn't the Holocaust, there was the Crusades, and it wasn't the Crusades, it was the Inquisition. If it wasn't the Inquisition, it was the Hadrianic persecutions. But guess what? At the end of each one of these things, we came out. Okay, there were 6 million Jews who were killed in the Holocaust. There's 6 million Jews in Israel today. Now, had the Jews not 6 million not died in the Holocaust, we'd have twice as many in Israel today, or 3 times or 4 times.
Right.
Okay, I'm not saying anything you don't know.
I know.
I'm just bringing you back to the larger picture. This is about the larger picture. Rabbi Teichel himself does not make it through the war. Rabbi Teichel himself dies in probably the last month or 2 of the war. After really surviving everything and hiding and running and escaping, he eventually, as the Nazis begin moving in, as the Allies begin moving in, he's in Auschwitz. They actually, one of the other camps, they actually start moving the inmates further inward. He's on a train, he's on a transport being moved from his death camp to another camp more internally into Germany, and he gets into a fight with a Ukrainian who takes away bread from another Jew. And he can't tolerate the injustice that the Ukrainian guard they starved the Jews on the cars, on the box cars. Now they finally gave out the bread. He grabbed away from the other Jew. He stood up to the Ukrainian, and they said, "Don't do this." And the Ukrainian beat him, and the Nazis beat him until he died. Maybe 2 months before the end of the war. So you say, the guy writes the book about this. What happened to him? Where was God? The answer is, that's an individual. Okay. I'm an individual. You're an individual. but we're part of a larger body. Okay? I mean, okay, but it's not okay. Not okay, but it's okay.
No, because Moses asked the same question. I know this.
Yeah, it's like saying you cut off a finger, you still survive, you know.
Right. Why do some people die when they're 80, and some people die when they're 100, some people die when they're 50?
You don't want to be the finger.
No, you don't want to be the finger. That's right.
No, but when you look at the life of a person, you look at the life of the person, not the life of the finger.
Yeah.
But you're right. Sometimes we are the finger. That's right. And sometimes we're caught in the wrong place. And sometimes there's good people who are just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
I'd rather be a hammer than a nail, right?
I'd rather be a hammer than a nail. Okay. Well, I think I'd rather be a flower than a hammer. Okay. Maybe not. I don't know. Flowers get picked. All right. Anyways, but that's what he's trying to say here. So even though the Jews as a people were not worthy, the God did not reject them completely. That's what it means. Now, there may have been people who were killed, and as Avram said, as Albert said, then the Jews were exiled, right? Because we didn't follow God. There was a punishment. But nonetheless, and others were involved in it as well. When the Jews were exiled because they're worshiping idols, what about the righteous people? Why were they exiled? There was no tzaddik. No real tzaddik, no super tzaddik who should have stayed behind.
You're right.
Yeah. Had Moshe Rabbeinu been part of that, he would have been exiled.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
Remember the legend of the 10 martyred rabbis? We say it in Yom Kippur, and they send up the Kohen Gadol. They say, "Go find out." Right, Rabbi Yishmael. They say, "Go find out what's going on," and they go up, and God says, "What? I can't let you know. If you ask this, I got to turn the world back to nothingness." Because it's hard for you to understand the different individual pieces.
I know. It's hard for me.
It's hard for me too. But you know what? But if we understand we're part of a larger group, right? Okay, V'Rabbeinu B'Noam Elimelech, and the author of the Noam Elimelech agrees, and he writes, Katav Gam Kem K'Divrei Rambam wrote like the Rambam wrote, and he says as follows, Ki HaKlalot Yisrael Him Tzadikim. The entirety of Israel is tzaddikim. In other words, you can't look at the individuals alone. Kmo shenemar, v'amecha kulam tzaddikim. It says in Isaiah that your people are all tzaddikim. What do you mean your people are all tzaddikim? We know they're not. It's not true. That's a false statement. What does it mean? V'im kein af she'prateim chotim lefamim. Even though some people are sinners, avla klalot heim tamid kayimim b'kedushasam. The group, the community itself will always have its kedusha, its sanctity. V'ein satan v'ein pegara lebahem klalila. There will not be a destruction of the complete community. And they will always have their form, will always be engraved before God. Which means, even though there are going to be individuals who suffer, the community as a whole, doesn't mean the community specifically, the people of Israel will survive. When the prophet, which he quoted before in the letter of the Rambam, compared the Navi, compared the Jewish people to measuring the heavens, is really what the Noam Elimelech was trying to say. That the communal nature of the Jewish people is whole and is written in front of God. Al-Kain Omar, the Kmodi Ev Shalom Dod Shemayim Mamala, Kampri Ev Shalom Dod et Erech Yisrael, Domdim Kisi HaKavod Mamala. Same way you cannot measure the heavens, so you can't measure the value of the Jewish people, as a group, as a community, as a people, as a nation, as I'm not sure how to define it, as this amorphous group of the Jewish people is in front of God's, is always before God's presence. You can't measure it. And the same thing is you can as well to search them out below. They're also considered in the heavens as a people, even if they actually fail to do God's presence in this world. And God will carry out His word, be truthful to His word. That we hope that He's confident that God will redeem us from this terrible galut that He's living through in 1943 in Budapest, and this harsh and bitter last galut that we have. As we say on Rosh Hashanah in the Kiddush and Tefillah, your word is true and exists forever. V'katava Beit Yosef, the Beit Yosef writes, Bechad Perush Dekoi al Avtachat Agula. When you say your word is true, it refers to the promise of the redemption. Shashemit Barach Yamet V'Ro B'Zeh Legolo Tana B'Karol B'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V'V' Okay, so then in other words, there will be redemption. In other words, he says, even though things look bad and there are individuals and so forth, nonetheless, there will be redemption that will come to the Jewish people. God will never abandon us completely. And he actually fervently believed that. Let's continue. However, the way that will be redeemed, and this is going to be as it is, whether we're going to be redeemed with suddenly miraculous miracles, or we're going to be redeemed with a miracle that is clothed in the natural order. This really depends on our acts and our behavior. Here's where our behavior comes about. If we're going to keep God's Torah, then we'll get a redemption that will be very clear and open. Then we'll get a miracle that will happen and be clear to everybody above all kinds of natural, above nature. If we're not going to follow God's command, the gula will happen, but it'll happen through a natural form of a miracle. It'll happen through the way the teva, the nature normally runs. This actually comes up in the Talmud in Sanhedrin, which says as follows. It says as follows: Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Rami. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi asked the question. It says, "Ksiv v'aro imanaya shema kfar enosh ata." The one pasuk says, "There comes when the clouds of heaven, like the Son of Man." This is from Daniel, right? Sometimes Christians use this pasuk too. V'ksiv, and it says, "Ani v'rochev al-chamor." And another pasuk says in Zechariah that the Mashiach is going to be coming like a pauper riding on a donkey. Well, what's he going to be coming as? Is Mashiach going to come on the clouds, or is Mashiach coming on the donkey? Zachu, which means, so what does it mean? Zachu, if we're worthy, what do you mean worthy? We do what we're supposed to do. Imanei Shmaya, then Mashiach will come on the clouds and will be clear to everybody. Lo Zachu, if we're not worthy of we're doing things correctly, we do things incorrectly, we turn away from Hashem. Ani Rochev al Chamor will be, the Mashiach will be like the donkey and the poor person coming on the donkey. So that's what the Gemara says. Yeah.
I'm a secular Jew. I've done no Torah study. I'm studying with Moshe this morning.
Yes.
I come in, Moshe reads me this paragraph. The Jewish people will be redeemed whether we're good or bad. I'm the secular...
I can't prove it to you. It's a belief statement.
But I'm the secular hedonist who's never done a lick of Torah study. But I'm told Hashem will redeem me. Let me continue my life the way it is. So what's the whole purpose of this? If the Jews don't do what they need to do, we're going to be redeemed anyways. Let me keep living the way I'm living.
Maybe you won't be redeemed. The Jewish people.
I have a portion of the world to come. I have a divine soul.
Maybe you won't get it. Maybe a portion is going to be so small you won't even know. You're going to sit on a chair, but the chair is like just one side of your rear end. You won't be able to sit down comfortably. These are the answers. The answers are, in other words, the Jewish people will be redeemed. What happens to you and me doesn't not guaranteed anywhere. So you, Mr. Secular Jew, and besides, you want to do this because it makes you a better person. That's the real answer why would you say to a secular Jew. Not because you're going to get rewarded, not because you're going to go to Gan Eden. Yeah. The real reason you wanted to keep the mitzvot is because it set your life in order. It's a good value statement. That's what I believe. I don't sit down every night and count up my mitzvot and averot. I think if I did, I'd find it difficult to go on. I mean, because I don't know what they're worth.
Yeah.
I don't speed on the highway, not because I'm going to get a ticket. Some of it's because I don't get a ticket, but some of it's because it makes sense to me. Because the people who wrote the rules understood what highway travel was, and they put certain limits on what I can do. And there's certain rules for reckless driving and how I lane change and what my speed limit stays. Mm-hmm. And I believe if I stay with those limits, I'll be a good driver. And you know what? And if I'm a good driver, then I'll make it to the end of my destination. If I'm a poor driver, I may drive off the road.
Yeah.
That's the real reason. So, okay. So Ritzon Lomar Mniyeh B'Vchinat Zachu. So what he's saying, though, however, in other words, there will become redemption, but how the redemption comes out is only going to depend on every person. If we're able to kind of be zoche, be worthy of the miracles because we're good Jews, then the redemption will come about through the Mashiach in the heavens, Shehu Nes before some. Lo zachu, but if we're not worthy because we're not following God, Azayah B'Teva, and that is Ani Rocheva Chamor. A Chomriot Teva. Chamor does not just mean a donkey, but Chomriot refers to unformed, base things of nature. B'Mchinat Aniyut, and will be with poorness, not really happiness, not really greatness, as the Archaim says in Parshas Bahar. V'chein katuvosh to Parshas Balak, the Mad Kasu Bazar Dizayim Nes before some, when it means there'll be an open miracle that will see Mashiach coming. That only happens in Mniyeh B'Mchinat Zachu, if we're actually worthy of doing it. Ava below Zachu, but if we're not worthy, Azayah Volana B'Teva will come about in nature. And what he's really talking about is he's living in nature. He's living during a very difficult era. But that's the laws of nature. The laws of nature was Hitler came to power, and people put him in power. People thought he would actually be good initially. They didn't realize what it was going to be. So once you put him in power, once everybody bowed down to him, once Chamberlain came away with, we have peace in our time by giving away Czechoslovakia, right, the Sudetenland, and later the rest of Czechoslovakia, he just kept going. So that's the laws of nature. If you want to be the unlaws of nature, you want to be the miracles, then we all have to become righteous, committed, spiritual. But when we are what we are, things work with laws of nature. Laws of nature says when you put a dictator in power, he'll be a dictator. Okay, let's do one more paragraph of Haggadah Mari Yecheskel, in the Haggadah of Mari Yecheskel, which is quoting here at the end of page 134. I saw Lebno Gadol Baal Shas and Tshuva Shari Tzedek Shekata Bezel Lashon Begula Hatida. In the future redemption, this is a commentary on the Haggadah, which of course Haggadah is about the Exodus from Egypt. He puts a little excursus that in the future redemption, Haikar Diyeb Nisim Gleglim, there'll be open miracles. Kmosh Nemar Kimeit Seitcha Mimitzvayim. Kimeid Seitcha Mimitzrayim Aren in the float. He doesn't quote the whole pasuk. Like the days of your coming out of Egypt, I will show you wonders. Mecha is writing about the future. Aval Yesh Omrim Shialpi Hitnagut Tivit. But some people say the future redemption will happen by nature. V'yesh Lomar Detalyim Zacho Lo Zacho. And it depends if we're worthy or not worthy, if we're good or we're righteous or not righteous. V'hinei Ma Sheba B'derech HaTeva Ino Pamachad. Following the Derech HaTeva is not one. It doesn't mean that suddenly there's one event that when Mashiach comes. El rak mizman lizman metapech poshet tzura v'lovei. From time to time, things happen, and forms are changing. L'mashal, like with nature. L'mashal gidulei perot bilan shenotim. In order to get fruit off a tree, tzarich zman, you need time. Hitpatchut, you need to turn over the ground. I think it's how they translate it. You have to, a lot of transformations are required. You've got to plant the tree, you've got to hoe the tree, you've got to water the tree, you've got to weed the tree, you've got to prune the tree, and eventually you get a fruit. However, when it came to using the staff of Aaron, when God wanted to show the power that he could do against Korach, that happened in 1 minute. It blossomed into almond blossoms immediately. If we're not being zocher, the gula will come, but through nature. Coming through nature is not a straight line. Coming through nature is about living through different eras, about different edicts and different gzeirot and different decrees and different societies. It requires time to be transformed. The requires time for it to grow and grow. So what he's really saying is that, in other words, you don't see it because it's about a natural phenomenon. In other words, if we would really be righteous, if we really be good, if we really be doing what we're supposed to be doing, okay, we all be tzaddikim, things would happen differently. But because we're not, and we're speaking to ourselves, because we're not tzaddikim, because nobody's a tzaddik, so the way Gula happens in a very circuitous way that we don't see it. And Hitler was part of the way to the Gula, strange as it sounds, because that will lead to something else, lead to something else, lead to something else, lead to something else. What his suggestion, where he's going with this really, is the fact that if we start moving to Eretz Yisrael, that just enhances the ability to bring the Gula even quicker. Mm-hmm. So this is the parts. And he goes on and continues with this idea a little further. I think maybe we'll take a break. We'll stop here at this point for today. Okay, right here in the middle of this page, top of page 135. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. So you see, it's a detailed book, but it kind of raises issues that we kind of look at ourselves. But the key really is, he himself is living through this difficult era, and he recognizes what